Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the stars twinkle in the endless darkness of space. The massive station orbited Kepler Prime, a neutral world where different alien species came to settle their problems without fighting. Elena had spent the last 15 years here, helping aliens solve their disputes with words instead of weapons. The station buzzed with activity. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians walked next to short, furry Bendari traders. The insect-like Kithrak clicked and chirped as they discussed mining rights with human negotiators. Everyone seemed to get along just fine, and Elena felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. "Another successful day," said Marcus Webb, Elena's assistant, as he joined her at the viewing window. He carried a data pad filled with reports from the day's meetings. "The Corvin dispute has been settled. Both sides agreed to share the asteroid belt instead of fighting over it." Elena smiled. This was what humans did best. While other species in the galaxy solved problems with guns and bombs, humans preferred to talk. They listened to both sides, found common ground, and helped everyone walk away happy. It had worked for 300 years, ever since humans first left Earth and met their alien neighbors. The Galactic Council loved having humans around. They were patient, fair, and never seemed to want anything for themselves except peaceful trade. Human merchants traveled throughout the galaxy in their simple cargo ships, bringing goods from one world to another. Human diplomats worked on every major space station, helping different species understand each other. The Krex Empire ambassador seemed annoyed today, Marcus noted, scrolling through his reports. He kept muttering about soft humans during the trade negotiations. Elena wasn't surprised. The Krex were a warrior race who believed strength came from conquest. They had built their empire by attacking weaker species and taking their worlds. To them, humans looked weak, because they preferred making deals instead of making war. "Let him think what he wants," Elena said calmly. "As long as he signs the peace treaty, his opinion doesn't matter." Many species thought humans were weak. The Void Hunters, who raided cargo ships for fun, called humans the galaxy's mediators like it was an insult. The proud Zephyrian Confederacy looked down on humans because they had achieved space travel through cooperation, instead of dominating other species first, but Elena knew something these aliens didn't understand. Humans weren't weak, they were careful. Every human ship that traveled the trade routes carried more than just cargo. Every human diplomat who smiled and shook hands at peace talks was gathering information. Every human research station that studied harmless things like stellar formation was actually learning much more interesting facts. Dr. Sarah Chen ran one such research station in the Outer Rim. Officially, she studied how stars were born. Unofficially, she tracked every military ship that passed through her sector. Her computers recorded their weapon signatures, their shield frequencies, and their communication codes. Other researchers throughout the galaxy did the same thing. Humanity had spent 3 centuries making friends and learning secrets. They knew which worlds the Krex Empire considered most important. They understood how Void Hunter raiding parties chose their targets. They had detailed maps of every species' military bases, trade routes, and defensive systems. The aliens thought they were teaching humans about galactic civilization. Really, humans were taking notes on how to destroy it if they ever needed to. "Ma'am," Marcus said, checking his communicator. "We're getting reports of unusual activity in the hegemony sectors. Ship movements, military exercises. Nothing official, but our observers are noting increased chatter." Elena frowned. The hegemony of Zarthak was a coalition of 12 aggressive species who thought the galaxy needed stronger leadership. They complained constantly about the Galactic Council's weakness and humanity's influence over smaller civilizations. Recently, their complaints had gotten louder. "Keep monitoring," Elena instructed, "and send word to Admiral Chen to be ready." Marcus looked confused. "Admiral Chen? I thought Dr. Chen ran the Stellar Research Station." Elena gave him a small smile. "She does. She also happens to be one of our best military commanders, just in case we ever need one." The truth was, every human in an important position had 2 jobs. Elena was an ambassador and a strategic analyst. Marcus was a diplomatic assistant and a communications specialist trained in electronic warfare. Dr. Chen studied stars and commanded a hidden fleet of warships disguised as research vessels. Humanity had learned early that the galaxy was a dangerous place. While they smiled and made peace, they also prepared for war. Their cargo ships carried hidden weapons, Their research stations housed military equipment. Their diplomats were trained soldiers who could switch from negotiating treaties to planning battles in minutes. The other species never suspected because humans were very good at acting peaceful. They had been practicing for 300 years. Elena walked back to her office thinking about the reports from hegemony space. The 12 species that made up the coalition were all aggressive, all convinced that might made right. They had been quiet lately, which worried her more than if they had been making threats. Her desk computer chimed with an incoming message from Earth. It was marked with the highest security codes, meaning it came directly from the Human Defense Command. Elena read it quickly, then read it again to make sure she understood. The message was simple. Festival of Unity in 2 weeks. All human colonies and stations to maintain normal operations. Emergency protocols ready for immediate activation. Stand by for further orders. Elena deleted the message and leaned back in her chair. The Festival of Unity happened every 10 years, celebrating peace between all galactic species. It was supposed to be a time of joy and cooperation, but intelligence reports suggested the hegemony might have other plans. She pressed a button on her desk, opening a secure channel to Dr. Chen's research station. Sarah, this is Elena. How are your star studies going? Very well, came the reply. Dr. Chen's voice sounded normal, but Elena could hear the tension underneath. We've been tracking some interesting solar flare activity. The patterns suggest we might need to adjust our instruments soon. Elena understood the code. Solar flare activity meant military movement. Adjusting instruments meant preparing weapon systems. Keep me informed of any changes, Elena said. The Festival of Unity is coming up and we want everything to run smoothly. Of course. We'll be ready for any kind of celebration. Elena closed the channel and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was planning something. They thought humans were soft, weak, and unprepared. They were about to learn how wrong they could be, but Elena hoped they wouldn't. Despite all the hidden weapons and secret preparations, humans really did prefer peace. They had built their reputation as mediators because they genuinely wanted different species to get along. War was something they prepared for but never wanted to use. The galaxy had been peaceful for decades because humans worked hard to keep it that way. They negotiated instead of fighting, traded instead of conquering, and made friends instead of enemies. Elena just hoped the hegemony would be smart enough to leave things alone. Deep down, though, she suspected they wouldn't be. The Festival of Unity was supposed to be the galaxy's greatest celebration. Every 10 years, representatives from hundreds of species gathered to celebrate peace and cooperation. This year, the main ceremony was being held on New Terra, humanity's largest colony world outside of Earth. Children from dozens of different species played together in the festival parks. Alien musicians performed songs of friendship, while families enjoyed food from across the galaxy. The celebration represented everything good about galactic civilization, different beings working together in harmony. Elena Vasquez had traveled from New Geneva Station to attend the ceremony. She stood on the main platform with other ambassadors, watching thousands of beings enjoy the festivities below. The sight should have filled her with joy, but she couldn't shake her worry about the hegemony. Beautiful day, said Ambassador Kethvar of the Altarian Republic. His blue skin shimmered in the sunlight as he watched children chase each other around a fountain. This is why the galaxy needs humanity. You bring out the best in all of us. Elena smiled, but her earpiece buzzed with a priority message. She touched it lightly, pretending to adjust her hair. All stations report normal, came the voice of Marcus Webb. No unusual activity detected in any sector. That should have been comforting, but Elena felt more worried. The hegemony had been planning something for weeks. The fact that everything looked normal made her nervous. On the other side of the galaxy, Grand War Master Zexhai of the hegemony of Zarthak stood in the command center of his flagship. The massive ship hung in space with 11 other command vessels, each representing one of the 12 species in the hegemony coalition. Status report, Zexhai demanded. His species, the Zarthak, looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had built the hegemony by convincing other aggressive species that the galaxy needed strong leadership. All attack groups are in position, reported war singer Clix of the Veltar. The insect-like being clicked its mandibles with excitement. The human colonies are celebrating. Their defenses are minimal. HFY studied the tactical display. Red dots marked 12 human worlds, all celebrating the Festival of Unity. The humans had no idea what was coming. Their pathetic defensive fleets were spread thin, trying to provide security for festival events across dozens of systems. Remember, HFY said to his commanders, "We target civilians only. No military installations, no strategic targets. We want the humans to understand that their peaceful ways cannot protect their children." The plan was perfect in its cruelty. The hegemony would attack human schools, hospitals, and residential areas during the galaxy's greatest celebration of peace. The message would be clear: submit to hegemony rule or watch your people die planet by planet. Other species would see human weakness and either join the hegemony or stay out of their way. The Galactic Council would fall apart without human diplomats to hold it together. Within a year, the hegemony would rule the galaxy. Begin the operation, HFY ordered. Across 12 star systems, hegemony fleets dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously. They had chosen their targets carefully, worlds with lots of civilians and weak defenses. The attacks began at exactly the same moment, during the peak of festival celebrations. On New Terra, Elena was giving a speech about galactic cooperation when the sky lit up with weapon fire. Hegemony ships appeared overhead, their guns already firing at the festival grounds. Screams filled the air as beings ran for cover. Elena's diplomatic training kicked in. Emergency evacuation protocol. She shouted into her communicator, "All civilians to the underground shelters." But the hegemony wasn't trying to capture the planet. They were trying to kill as many innocents as possible. Their weapons targeted schools where alien children played together, hospitals treating patients from across the galaxy, and residential areas where families lived in peace. The same scene played out on 11 other human worlds. Harmony Station, a massive space habitat where humans and aliens lived together, exploded under concentrated fire. Eden's Rest, an agricultural world that fed half the outer rim, burned as hegemony ships destroyed farms and cities alike. The human defensive fleets tried to respond, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. Most of their ships were simple patrol vessels, designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not military fleets. They fought bravely but were quickly overwhelmed. Elena watched in horror as the festival grounds around her turned into a battlefield. A hegemony plasma cannon destroyed the children's play area where she had seen younglings laughing just minutes before. Another blast took out the medical tent where doctors from 12 species had been treating minor injuries. "Elena!" Marcus appeared beside her, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "We need to get you to safety." "No," Elena said firmly. "We need to coordinate the evacuation. How many other worlds are under attack?" Marcus checked his communicator, his face growing pale. "All of them. Every major human colony. They're not targeting our military bases. They're hitting civilians only." Elena felt something cold and terrible growing in her chest. This wasn't war, it was genocide. The hegemony was trying to break humanity's spirit by murdering their families. "Get me a direct line to Earth," she ordered. "The communications array is damaged," Marcus replied. "Most of our long-range systems are down." Above them, a human patrol ship tried to ram a hegemony cruiser. The brave gesture barely scratched the enemy's shields before the patrol ship was vaporized by return fire. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, trying to think. Around her, the sounds of destruction continued. Buildings collapsed, sirens wailed, and people screamed for loved ones who would never answer. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed in her expression. The patient diplomat was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. "Marcus, do we still have the emergency beacon network?" "Yes, ma'am. The hardened transmitters should still be working." "Good. Send code Crimson Dawn to all human ships and stations. Tell them the Festival of Unity is over." Marcus stared at her. Crimson Dawn was a code he had never heard before, but Elena's tone made it clear this was no ordinary evacuation order. As the attacks continued across 12 worlds, the hegemony broadcast their message to the entire galaxy. Grand War Master HFY appeared on every major communication network, standing over scenes of burning human cities. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced, "you have just witnessed the true face of power. The humans cannot protect themselves, much less protect you. Their age of weakness is over. Submit to the hegemony and you will be spared. Resist us, and you will share the humans' fate." The broadcast showed footage from the attacks, human civilians running from falling buildings, Rescue workers trying to save trapped families. The peaceful festival of unity transformed into a nightmare of death and destruction. When the attacks finally ended 6 hours later, the casualty reports began coming in. New Terra, 1 million dead. Harmony Station, 800,000. Eden's Rest, 400,000. The numbers kept climbing until they reached a total that made the galaxy gasp in shock. 2.3 billion humans had died in a single day. The hegemony fleets withdrew to safe distance, waiting for humanity's surrender. They expected broken messages begging for mercy. They expected the survivors to agree to any terms rather than face more attacks. What they got instead was silence. Every human ship, every human station, every human colony went completely dark. No communications, no broadcasts, no responses to hails. For 72 hours it was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. The Galactic Council tried desperately to contact human representatives. Alien species who had been friends with humanity for centuries sent messages of sympathy and offers of help. Even some hegemony members began to worry that they had gone too far, but the humans said nothing. On the third day, exactly 72 hours after the attacks, every human facility in the galaxy came back online simultaneously. A single message was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, to every corner of known space. Ambassador Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen, standing in what looked like a military command center. Her diplomatic robes were gone, replaced by a simple black uniform. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something that made even hardened warriors step back from their screens. To the hegemony of Zarthak, she said in a voice that could freeze plasma, "You wanted to see what monsters look like. Consider this your education." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Somewhere in that silence, humanity was no longer the peaceful mediator species everyone thought they knew. The hegemony was about to learn what humans really were when their children were threatened. The galaxy held its breath for 3 days after Elena Vasquez's chilling message. Every species waited to see what humanity would do next. Some expected desperate counterattacks that would fail. Others thought humans might surrender to prevent more civilian deaths. Nobody expected what actually happened. It started small. A hegemony patrol near the Rigel system reported that human cargo ships in the area had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not captured, just gone. The patrol leader assumed they had fled to safer space and thought nothing more about it. Then a Zarthak supply convoy disappeared between 2 military bases. 20 ships loaded with weapons and ammunition just stopped existing. No distress calls, no wreckage, no explanation. Search teams found empty space where the convoy should have been. Grand War Master Zexhai stood in his command center, studying reports that made no sense. 17 human research stations throughout hegemony space had gone dark during the 72-hour silence. When his forces went to investigate, they found the stations completely abandoned, but that was impossible. His intelligence said those stations each housed thousands of human scientists. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Korthak's fleet near the hegemony border." The screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Korthak of the Krex Empire. The powerful warrior looked confused and angry. "War Master, my sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout this sector, but I can't locate their source. It's like space itself is generating power readings. Request immediate reinforcements." Before Zexhai could respond, Korthak's image started breaking apart. Static filled the transmission, then the signal died completely. "Re-establish contact with Admiral Korthak," Zexhai ordered. "Unable to comply, sir. The entire Third Fleet has stopped responding to communications." Zexhai felt a chill run down his scaled spine. The Third Fleet consisted of over 200 warships. They couldn't just disappear. Across the galaxy, human cargo ships that had traveled peaceful trade routes for centuries were revealing their true nature. Hidden panels slid open on vessels that aliens had seen as harmless freighters. Advanced weapon systems emerged from cargo bays. Defensive shields activated with power levels that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of what the galaxy knew as the merchant vessel, Peaceful Trader. For 20 years, she had carried grain and manufactured goods between human and alien worlds. Alien customs officials had inspected her ship dozens of times, always finding exactly what her manifest claimed. They had never thought to scan the cargo containers with quantum resonance detectors. If they had, they would have discovered that half the grain shipments were actually compressed antimatter warheads, and the manufactured goods were components for weapons that could tear holes in space-time itself. All weapon systems online, reported her tactical officer. Shields at maximum power. Cloaking field stable, Maria nodded. Around her, the bridge that had looked like a simple cargo hauler's control room was transforming. Hidden panels revealed advanced holographic displays, tactical computers, and command systems that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. Target the hegemony supply depot in this system, she ordered. Use pattern Delta 7. The peaceful trader fired a single shot. The weapon looked like a normal plasma cannon blast, but when it hit the hegemony supply depot, something impossible happened. The massive military station didn't just explode. It started breaking apart at the molecular level, disintegrating from the inside out as its atomic bonds were rewritten. Similar scenes played out throughout hegemony space. Human ships that had been ignored as harmless. Traders and researchers suddenly revealed themselves as the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of what the galaxy knew as the Outer Rim Stellar Research Station. The facility's true name was Forward Base Omega, and it was one of humanity's most important military installations. Status report, Sarah requested, though her title was now Admiral Chen rather than Dr. Chen. All stealth ships have reported in, her operations officer replied. The enemy has no idea we've been surrounding their territories for the past 50 years, Sarah smiled grimly. While humanity had been playing the role of peaceful mediators, they had been positioning ships and weapons throughout the galaxy. Every research expedition had left behind hidden monitoring stations. Every trade mission had mapped defensive systems and identified weak points. The aliens thought they had been teaching humans about galactic civilization. Really, humans had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Begin Phase 2, Sarah ordered. Hegemony military bases throughout 12 star systems came under attack simultaneously, but these weren't normal space battles. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck with devastating precision, then vanished before the enemy could respond. The Veltar hive mind tried to coordinate their defenses, but human forces had been studying their neural communication patterns for decades. Carefully targeted electromagnetic pulses disrupted the connections between Veltar individuals, leaving their fleets confused and leaderless. The Kithrak attempted to use their superior numbers, swarming human ships with thousands of small fighters. But humans had learned exactly which pheromone compounds would trigger the Kithrak's fear response. Chemical weapons designed specifically for insectoid biology turned entire swarms into panicked mobs that attacked each other instead of their targets. Grand War Master HFY watched his empire crumble in real time. Every species in the hegemony had weaknesses that humans seemed to understand perfectly. The Krex Empire's warriors were brave, but relied on honor codes that humans exploited ruthlessly. The Void Hunters were fast but predictable once you understood their raiding patterns. How is this possible? HFY demanded. Our intelligence said humans had weak technology and small fleets. His intelligence officer, a nervous Bendari who had been captured years ago, checked his files with shaking hands. According to our data, human ships use plasma weapons with standard energy yields. Their shields operate on conventional force field technology. Their computers are decades behind ours. On screen, a human vessel was demonstrating weapons that dissolved enemy ships at the quantum level. Its shields absorbed energy attacks and somehow redirected them back at the attackers. Its computers were hacking hegemony systems faster than their operators could respond. Your data is wrong, HFY said quietly. No, sir, it's not. We've been monitoring human technology for 3 centuries. These capabilities don't exist in our records. HFY understood with horrible clarity. The technology did exist, humans had just been hiding it. Every peaceful cargo ship had been a disguised warship. Every research station had been a military base. Every diplomatic mission had been a spy operation. For 300 years, humanity had been pretending to be weak while building the most powerful military force in galactic history. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission on all channels. The screen changed to show Admiral Sarah Chen standing on a starship bridge that looked like it belonged in a science fiction story. Advanced displays showed tactical information from across hegemony space. Every human ship, base, and weapon was represented by blue icons that vastly outnumbered the red symbols marking hegemony forces. Grand War Master HFY, Sarah said calmly. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You wanted to teach the galaxy about strength. Allow me to show you what real strength looks like. Behind her, the tactical display updated in real time as hegemony positions fell one by one. Entire fleets were disappearing as human forces struck with surgical precision. You attacked our children during a celebration of peace, Sarah continued. You murdered 2 billion innocents to make a point about power. Now you will learn why humanity chose to be peaceful. Because what we become when that choice is taken away would terrify you. The transmission shifted to show images from across hegemony space. Human ships were methodically destroying every military installation, every weapon depot, every shipyard that the coalition possessed. But they weren't just attacking. They were demonstrating technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Ships that could phase through solid matter, passing through enemy shields like they weren't there. Weapons that could make enemy vessels simply stop existing. Computer viruses that could rewrite the basic programming of alien technology in seconds. The hegemony of Zarthak is finished, Sarah announced. Your military forces are being neutralized as we speak. Your leaders will face justice for their crimes. Your civilian populations will be unharmed, unlike ours. HFY felt his empire dying around him. Everything the hegemony had built over centuries of conquest was being dismantled in hours by an enemy they had thought was weak and helpless. This is impossible, he whispered. On screen, Admiral Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. Grand War Master, you're about to learn that humans have always been very good at making impossible things happen. We just prefer to do it peacefully. The transmission ended, leaving HFY staring at a tactical display that showed his forces collapsing across 12 star systems. The destruction of the hegemony military took less than a week. What followed was something far more terrifying. Humanity's demonstration that they understood their enemies better than those enemies understood themselves. Grand War Master HFY sat in his command bunker on the hegemony capital, world of Zarthak Prime, watching his empire collapse in real time. The surface above him shook as human ships systematically destroyed every military installation on the planet. But they weren't trying to kill civilians. They were sending a different message. Sir? His aide reported with a trembling voice. The humans are broadcasting something. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Sarah Chen standing in what looked like a laboratory. Behind her, human scientists worked at stations displaying detailed biological and technological data about every hegemony species. Greetings. Zarthak, Sarah said, speaking directly to the planet's population. I thought you might be interested to know what we've learned about you during our 3 centuries of peaceful contact. The display changed to show a detailed anatomical scan of a Zarthak warrior. Every organ, every nerve cluster, every biological system was mapped in perfect detail. Your species relies on a specific pheromone to maintain social cohesion, Sarah continued. Remove that pheromone and your society collapses into competing tribal factions. We've been studying your biology since our first diplomatic contact. We know exactly how to synthesize the compounds that will make your people turn on each other. HFY felt his blood turn to ice. The humans weren't just threatening military defeat. They were threatening to destroy Zarthak civilization from within. Of course, Sarah added. We won't need to use that knowledge. Because you're going to surrender unconditionally. The broadcast switched to show similar displays for all 12 hegemony species. The Veltar hive mind relied on quantum entanglement between individual drones. Humans had learned to disrupt those connections, turning a unified consciousness into billions of confused, isolated minds. The Kithrak reproductive cycle depended on specific temperature and humidity conditions. Humans could create atmospheric processors that would make their worlds uninhabitable for breeding, dooming the species to slow extinction. Each revelation was more horrifying than the last. Humanity hadn't just studied alien military capabilities during their peaceful years. They had analyzed every possible weakness, every vulnerability, every way to destroy or control their galactic neighbors. Commander HFY of the Krex Empire watched the broadcast from his damaged flagship. His proud warrior species, feared throughout the galaxy for their combat skills, was being dissected like a specimen in a laboratory. Krek's honor codes require you to fight to the death rather than surrender. Admiral Chen's voice continued. But those same codes have 17 specific exceptions for protecting civilian populations. We've studied your culture for 300 years. We know exactly which words to say that will make your warriors lay down their weapons to save non-combatants. Around Vexahai, his bridge crew looked stunned. Their most sacred traditions, the foundation of their entire civilization, had been mapped and analyzed by human scholars. Everything they thought made them strong had been turned into a weapon against them. The broadcast continued for hours, methodically revealing how completely humanity understood each hegemony species. They knew which radio frequencies would drive the sonic-sensitive Althar insane. They understood how to create computer viruses that could rewrite cyber syndicate artificial intelligences. They had developed weapons tailored specifically for each species' unique biology and psychology. But the most terrifying part wasn't the knowledge itself. It was how casually the humans displayed it. They weren't threatening or boasting. Admiral Chen spoke like a teacher explaining simple facts to children. "We want the galaxy to understand something important," Sarah said as the broadcast neared its end. "Humanity chose to be peaceful. We spent 3 centuries building friendships instead of weapons, negotiating instead of conquering, helping instead of harming. That was our choice." The display showed images from the Festival of Unity attacks, human children running from falling buildings, families torn apart by hegemony weapons, rescue workers dying as they tried to save others. "You took that choice away from us," Sarah continued, her voice growing colder. "You murdered our children to make a point about strength. Now you will learn what strength actually means." The screen changed to show space around the hegemony capital system. What the defenders saw made them abandon any hope of victory. Human ships were everywhere, not dozens or hundreds. Thousands upon thousands of vessels filled the space around Zarthak Prime. Ship designs that had never been seen before hung in perfect formation, their weapons trained on the planet below. "Every cargo ship that visited your worlds was a disguised warship," Sarah explained. "Every research station was a military base. Every diplomatic mission was an intelligence operation. We've been preparing for this possibility since the day we first left Earth." Zexai stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human fleet surrounding his homeworld was larger than the combined militaries of 50 species. Ships that looked like nothing in any database hung in space, their energy signatures reading at impossible levels. "How many ships do they have?" his tactical officer whispered. "According to our sensors, approximately 12,000 vessels in this system alone," came the shaky reply. 12,000 ships. The entire hegemony military had possessed fewer than 3,000 vessels at full strength. And most of those had already been destroyed. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving surrender demands from everyone. Every hegemony world, every fleet commander, every station. They're all asking for terms." Zexai closed his eyes. It was over. The mighty hegemony that had conquered hundreds of worlds was being dismantled by the species they had thought was weakest. But Admiral Chen wasn't finished. "We want to show you one more thing," she said. And the display changed to show a new type of human weapon. It looked like a simple probe, barely larger than a fighter craft. "This is a stellar destabilizer," Sarah explained calmly. "It can make stars go supernova. We've had this technology for over a century, but we've never used it. We prefer to solve problems without destroying entire solar systems." The probe approached a small star at the edge of hegemony space. It was a red dwarf with no inhabited planets, chosen specifically to demonstrate the weapon's power without killing anyone. The probe fired a single pulse into the star's core. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the star began to change. Its surface erupted with massive solar flares. Its color shifted from red to orange to white to blue. Then it exploded. The stellar explosion was visible from dozens of light years away. A star that should have burned for billions more years had been turned into a supernova in minutes. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated they could kill suns themselves. "The hegemony capital system has a much larger star," Admiral Chen noted conversationally. "If we detonate it, the explosion will be visible from the galactic core. We estimate it would destroy everything within 50 light years." Zexai felt his species' ancient courage crumble. They were warriors who feared no enemy. But how do you fight beings who can make stars explode? "However," Sarah continued, "we won't be using that weapon on inhabited systems. Unlike the hegemony, we don't murder innocents to make political points. Relief flooded through Zexhai, followed immediately by shame. The humans were showing more mercy than his own people had. Instead, we're going to give you a choice, Admiral Chen said. Surrender unconditionally, face justice for your crimes, and live. Or continue fighting, and we'll demonstrate why every species in the galaxy learned to fear humans long before they learned to love us. The broadcast ended, leaving the hegemony leadership in their bunkers, staring at displays showing human fleets surrounding every one of their worlds. Across 12 star systems, hegemony commanders looked at their tactical displays and realized the truth. They weren't fighting a war anymore. They were being exterminated by beings so far beyond them technologically that resistance was meaningless. One by one, hegemony fleets began broadcasting surrender signals, but humanity's response was swift and final. We don't accept surrenders from child killers, came Admiral Chen's cold reply to every attempt at negotiation. The galaxy watched in horrified fascination as the most powerful military coalition in known space was systematically destroyed by the beings they had thought were the weakest. And in the depths of space, human ships continued their methodical work, demonstrating to the universe exactly what happened when someone threatened humanity's children. The hegemony had wanted to teach the galaxy about strength. Instead, they were learning that some lessons are fatal. The end came not with a battle, but with a star dying. Grand Warmaster Zexhai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his homeworld of Zarthak Prime grow larger on the view screen. He was returning home for the last time, carrying the final survivors of his species' leadership. Around them, human ships maintained their silent vigil, waiting for something that everyone knew was coming. The hegemony was finished. 11 of the 12 member species had already fallen. Their fleets were destroyed, their worlds occupied, their leaders either dead or captured. Only the Zarthak remained surrounded and helpless, waiting for humanity to decide their fate. Sir, his communications officer reported, Admiral Chen is hailing us. Zexhai straightened his shoulders. Even in defeat, he would face death with dignity. Put her through. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, standing on the bridge of her flagship. She looked tired, as if the past weeks of warfare had drained something from her, but her eyes still held that terrible coldness that had terrified the galaxy. Grand Warmaster, she said formally, you are the last leader of the hegemony coalition still alive. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender unconditionally. Zexhai felt a flicker of hope. You said you don't accept surrenders from child killers. I don't, Sarah replied. But I'm told that you were the only hegemony leader who argued against attacking civilian targets. Your own military records show you wanted to strike our defensive installations instead of our colonies. It was true. Zexhai had fought against the decision to target human children. He had believed the hegemony could win through military victory without resorting to mass murder. He had been overruled by the other 11 leaders, who had thought terror was a more effective weapon than honor. I was still part of the decision, Zexhai said quietly. I could have refused to participate. Yes, you could have, Sarah agreed. And for that you will face trial. But you tried to minimize civilian casualties, so you will get a trial instead of what we gave the others. Zexhai thought about the other 11 hegemony leaders. They had died in the first days of the war, when human forces had systematically hunted down everyone responsible for planning the Festival of Unity attacks. Their deaths had been swift but final. What about my people? He asked. What happens to the Zarthak civilians? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Nothing. They weren't responsible for their leaders' crimes. They'll be allowed to rebuild their civilization under galactic supervision. It was more mercy than the hegemony had shown to dozens of conquered species over the centuries. Zexhai felt ashamed that the weak humans were proving more honorable than his warrior culture. I surrender, he said formally. I place myself and my remaining forces under your authority, Sarah nodded. Thank you. Your cooperation will be noted at your trial. The screen changed to show a different human ship approaching the Zarthak homeworld. Unlike the warships surrounding the planet, this vessel looked peaceful. It was one of humanity's original cargo haulers, unmarked by hidden weapons or military modifications. That ship will take you to Earth for your trial, Sarah explained. But first, there's something the galaxy needs to see. The display switched to show the hegemony's original capital world, a planet called Dominion that housed the Coalition's central government. It orbited a massive blue star that had burned bright for millions of years. As the galaxy watched, a small human probe approached the star. It was the same type of stellar destabilizer that had been demonstrated before, but this target was different. Dominion's star was huge, ancient, and surrounded by 12 planets that had once housed the hegemony's ruling councils. The planets were empty now. Humanity had evacuated every civilian in the system, moving billions of beings to safety on other worlds. Only the empty government buildings remained, monuments to an empire built on conquest and cruelty. The probe fired its single pulse into the star's core. The death of a massive star was different from the red dwarf humanity had destroyed earlier. This one fought its fate, struggling against the forced fusion reactions that humanity had triggered. Solar flares larger than planets erupted from its surface. Its color shifted through the spectrum as its core temperature rose beyond control. Then it went supernova. The explosion was visible from halfway across the galaxy. A star that should have burned for 10 million more years died in minutes, taking the hegemony's seat of power with it. The blast sterilized 12 worlds that had ruled over hundreds of others. But the real message wasn't the destruction. It was what came next. Admiral Chen appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, broadcasting from the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, the stellar explosion painted space in brilliant colors that would be visible for centuries. To all species of the galactic community, she began, the hegemony of Zarthak is finished. Their military forces have been neutralized. Their leaders have faced justice for their crimes. Their threat to galactic peace has been permanently removed. The camera pulled back to show the human fleet surrounding the dead star system. Thousands of ships hung in perfect formation, their weapons silent but ready. The Terran Federation wants to make something clear to the galaxy, Sarah continued. We did not enjoy this war. We took no pleasure in these deaths. Every action we took was a response to the murder of our civilians during a celebration of peace. The display shifted to show images from throughout human space. Reconstruction crews were already working on the worlds attacked during the Festival of Unity. Human engineers worked alongside alien volunteers to rebuild the destroyed cities. Medical teams from dozens of species treated the wounded without regard for their home planets. Humanity chooses to be peaceful, Sarah said. We have spent 3 centuries building friendships, negotiating agreements, and helping different species understand each other. That was our choice, and it remains our choice. She paused, looking directly into the camera. But if anyone ever again targets our children, our families, or our civilians, they will learn that we are very good at making other choices as well. The broadcast ended, but its message echoed throughout the galaxy. Humanity was returning to its role as mediator and peacekeeper, but everyone now understood the true cost of threatening them. One by one, human warships began powering down their weapon systems. Hidden panels slid shut, concealing advanced military technology behind innocent-looking cargo bays. The terrible fleet that had destroyed the hegemony started transforming back into simple merchant vessels and research ships. Within hours, the same ships that had demonstrated the power to kill stars were broadcasting offers to help with reconstruction efforts. Human doctors volunteered to treat hegemony survivors. Human engineers offered to rebuild damaged infrastructure on former enemy worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt chambers of the Galactic Council, straightening her diplomatic robes. The chamber had been damaged during the hegemony's brief rule, but human construction teams had restored it to its former glory in record time. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats around her. Many were familiar faces, allies who had supported humanity during the dark days after the festival attacks. Others were former hegemony members who were now learning to participate in galactic democracy instead of ruling through force. The Terran Federation remains committed to galactic peace, Elena announced to the Assembly. We hope the recent unpleasantness won't affect our ongoing trade negotiations with the Altarian Republic. Her words were exactly the same ones she had used for decades in these chambers. The same diplomatic language, the same focus on cooperation and mutual benefit. As if humanity hadn't just demonstrated the power to exterminate entire civilizations, but every representative in the chamber understood the subtext. The polite human sitting before them was the same species that could make suns explode. The cargo ships offering to deliver grain to their worlds carried weapons that could rewrite matter at the quantum level. Humanity's mercy wasn't weakness. It was a choice. And choices could be changed. The Altarian ambassador cleared his throat nervously. The Republic would be honored to continue our trade relationship with humanity. Perhaps we could discuss expanded cooperation in several sectors. Of course, Eleanor replied with a warm smile. We've always believed that mutual prosperity benefits everyone. The session continued with discussions of trade routes, resource sharing, and diplomatic protocols. Everything was exactly as it had been before the war, except for one crucial difference. Nobody would ever again mistake humanity's peaceful nature for helplessness. In the depths of space, human ships continued their endless journeys between the stars. They carried grain and manufactured goods just as they always had. They provided escort services for alien merchants and helped resolve disputes between different species. But sometimes, when sensors detected them in deep space, other ships' crews would remember the images of dying stars and choose different routes. The galaxy had learned to love humanity's friendship. Now, they had also learned to fear their fury, and in the careful balance between those two emotions, peace reigned more completely than it ever had before. After all, who would be foolish enough to threaten the children of a species that could make the universe itself tremble? The answer, hopefully, was no one, ever again.